They were ordinary men, fishermen, tax collectors, skeptics, and zealots. But when they met Jesus, everything changed. They walked beside him, listened to his teachings, witnessed his miracles, and saw the world transformed in front of their eyes. But with great purpose came great persecution. After Christ's resurrection, these men didn't retreat. They rose. They spread his message across continents, facing angry mobs, hostile governments, and violent empires. Each one could have saved himself. Each one could have stayed silent, but none of them did. They preached in foreign lands, stood trial before kings, and were hunted like criminals, all for one reason. They refused to deny what they had seen, that Jesus Christ was alive. And for that unshakable faith, they paid the ultimate price. Some were crucified, others were stoned. One was flayed alive, one was speared, one betrayed, and died in despair. Another was beheaded under the shadow of Rome's most ruthless emperor. This is not just the story of how they lived, it's the haunting story of how they died, and why their deaths still echo through the corridors of time. These are the tragic ends of the 12 disciples, and Paul, the man who once hunted Christians but became one of the greatest apostles of all. Peter, the rock who was broken. He was the one who dared to step out of the boat, the only one brave enough to walk on water, and yet the one who began to sink when fear took over. Peter, the fisherman from Galilee, impulsive, passionate, flawed, yet fiercely loyal. He was the first to declare Jesus as the Christ, and the first to draw a sword when they came to arrest him. But he was also the one who, under pressure, denied his master not once, not twice, but 3 times. And yet, even after failure, Peter was not discarded. He was restored, forgiven, chosen. Jesus gave him a new name, the Rock, the one who would become the foundation of the early church. After Christ's resurrection, Peter transformed, no longer afraid, no longer hiding. He stood in the streets of Jerusalem, boldly proclaiming the gospel to thousands, even as the threat of death loomed over him. He healed the sick, he raised the dead, he converted hearts. But with every sermon, every miracle, every soul saved, the shadow of Rome grew darker. Peter was eventually captured and taken to the heart of the empire, to Rome, where the Christian faith was seen as rebellion and madness. Under the cruel reign of Emperor Nero, Christians were tortured, burned, and fed to beasts. And Peter, the unshakable rock, was sentenced to die by crucifixion. But in a final act of humility, he made a simple request: "I am not worthy to die as my Lord did. Crucify me upside down." And so they did. Inverted on a Roman cross, Peter drew his last breath, not as a failure, not as the man who denied, but as the man who stood firm until the end. His death wasn't just a martyrdom, it was a testimony that broken men, when gripped by grace, can stand taller than kings.
2. James the Greater, first to fall. He was a son of thunder, a fisherman turned disciple, the brother of John, and one of Jesus's closest companions. James the Greater wasn't just a follower, he was in the inner circle. He stood on the mountain during the Transfiguration, where Christ's divine glory burst through the veil of flesh. He knelt in the shadows of Gethsemane while Jesus wept blood. He was there for the moments few others were ever allowed to witness. After the resurrection, James didn't fade into the background. He rose with a fire in his bones. He preached the gospel with boldness in Jerusalem, proclaiming that the man they crucified had risen, that he was the Messiah, that salvation had a name, and it was Jesus. But the world wasn't ready for the truth. The political tides had shifted. Herod Agrippa, seeking to please the Jewish elite, made a brutal statement. He had James arrested. There was no trial, no defense, only a swift, savage sentence: death. They led James through the crowded streets of Jerusalem, the city that had once shouted Hosanna, but had since traded grace for blood. The executioner raised the sword, not just to kill, but to send a message to the entire church: stay silent or suffer the same fate. But James didn't flinch, and then something unexpected happened. A Roman guard, ordered to oversee the execution, watched James closely. He saw no fear, no hatred, only peace, only courage. And in that moment, the guard's heart was pierced, not by a blade, but by the truth. He stepped forward, declared his faith in Christ, and was executed beside James. The first martyr of the 12 didn't fall alone. He fell beside a soul saved by his courage. James's death sent shockwaves through the early church, not just because of the brutality, but because of what it proved. The message of Christ was worth dying for. And if James could face the sword with such boldness, then others would rise too. He was the first of the 12 to seal his testimony with blood, and in doing so, he lit the torch that would be passed from martyr to martyr, flame to flame, heart to heart, for generations to come. 3. John, the last to die. He was the beloved disciple, the one who leaned on Jesus at the Last Supper, the only one who stood at the foot of the cross when all others fled. When the sky went dark and hope seemed lost, John stayed. Jesus looked down from the cross and entrusted John with something precious: his own mother. That's the kind of man John was: loyal, faithful, fearless in love. After the resurrection, John became a pillar of the early church. He preached in Jerusalem, then in Ephesus, writing with unmatched depth and power. His words didn't just teach, they stirred hearts. Through him, we received the Gospel of John, 3 timeless epistles, and later, a revelation that would shake the world. But John's journey wasn't easy. Rome had crushed countless Christians. They crucified Peter, beheaded Paul, and burned believers as living torches. And they came for John too. Under Emperor Domitian's reign of terror, John was arrested and brought to Rome. There, they tried to make an example of him. He was thrown into a vat of boiling oil, his flesh expected to melt away in screams. But it didn't. Miraculously, John emerged alive. Not a burn, not a scar. The crowd was stunned. Rome had no answer for it. Unable to kill him, they did the next best thing: silence him. He was exiled to the remote rocky island of Patmos, isolated, forgotten, but not by God. It was on that barren island that John received a vision, a divine unveiling of things to come. Heaven opened before his eyes. Angels, judgments, the Lamb, the final victory of good over evil. From that place of punishment, John penned the book of Revelation, a prophecy that still stirs souls across the world today. John lived to see what none of the others did. One by one, he watched his brothers fall: James, Peter, Thomas, Andrew, martyred for the same Lord he loved. The pain of survival etched itself into his heart. But he never gave up. He never walked away. Though he was the last of the 12 to die, he was also the last to testify. And in the silence of old age, he left behind a message not of fear, but of love. Because John understood something the world still struggles to grasp: love endures, truth prevails, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it.